Hello! It's another busy day at the farm, so you're going to hear a lot of fans and machinery and whatnot. But we're going to talk about rose harvest. It is the week after Mother's Day in May. Perfect timing for roses to be in full bloom, and they are. So, first thing I'll mention is how to assess roses for sale. We work with a lot of florists in the Bay Area, in the Sonoma County area, and some small groceries. We sell for farmers markets. Roses are a great crop in all of those outlets. But we need to know what to promise and how to give people the opportunity to order a week ahead of delivery. So once a week, I will do my field walk and I'll assess where every variety is at. The stage of readiness that I'm looking at will depend on the weather and what I can expect from the forecast looking ahead. And it doesn't help for me to tell you what stage I'm looking at because it will very much depend on your climate. We harvest roses here every day in our warm, balmy May weather. If you were harvesting roses in Pescadero, you might be harvesting less frequently. And roses will be becoming ready slower. But I'll take good judgment based on how warm it's going to be and be looking at for each row how many plants do I think it will take to produce a bunch. A bunch for us is 12-stem bunch of roses for florists or a 6-stem bunch of roses at the farmer's market. Once I have written all that information down on my little sheet, I will enter it into the computer in one of our sales platforms, and customers receive my availability list, can order online, which depletes the inventory until we're sold out. And then my job the following week is to be good on my promises and provide them with perfect 12-stem bunches of roses that will open up just so in time for their weekend events. So harvest morning, we come out and we start in the roses first thing while it's cool. We don't want to harvest roses when it's warm because we want to extend their vase life and never have them take on any kind of stress. So we come out in the cool of the morning. We're equipped with our leather gloves that protect us up to our forearms. We have our very sharp snips that aren't going to crush our stems, but rather slice them cleanly, allowing for the most surface area for water to rehydrate the stems. And I'm going to go systematically through each variety, either deadheading flowers that are too far gone or harvesting stems that are saleable. So I'm looking at what's my window of harvest, most immature to the most mature that I can harvest. And anything that's beyond that, I'm going to deadhead, or if it's younger than that, I'm going to leave it. So ideal stage for harvesting roses is in bud stage, but a bud where the petals are mature and starting to unfurl. Here's an example of a great stage for this rose. This variety here is called Generous Gardener. It's a David Austin variety, much like the rest of our rose patch, with a few exceptions. And David Austin, as you may know if you follow Oren's videos, is a rose breeder who figured out how to cross modern roses with old-fashioned roses, thus having the kind of beautiful romantic display of an old-fashioned rose, but with repeat blooming qualities of a modern rose. Anyhow, you can see that this rose is still closed, but these petals are smooth, mature, they're starting to unfurl. This is a great rose. And it also has a long enough stem. I don't mess with stems that are less than 12 inches long. just need to, on your availability list, be able to have a standard that people can know what to expect. So if it's less than 12 inches long, that's going to be a deadhead choice. This one is probably the youngest you could take the rose. We still have some unfurling, but you can see that it's a little tighter than this one. This is as young as we're gonna go. If it's tighter than this, it's too soon. And what you could, you run the risk of the flower head just kind of wilting over and never actually maturing. So let me find some examples of ones that are too soon. Let's see. Not only is this short, but that's too young. You can see it next to the others. Is that a decent shot? Okay.
That's where you hold it right there.
Okay. Then, of course, we have what's the most open that we can harvest. And the most open that we would harvest this rose would be about this stage. You can see, compared to our first, this is much more advanced. It's loosened, it's unfurling, but it still has a lot more to give. There are many petals that are hidden within, and so that is the max. I also, when I'm making bunches, I'll do sorting as I go, and I prefer to fill florist bunches with the bud roses. Just so they can control how quickly they open by where they store their bunches in this week ahead of their event, but I'd rather not give them stress of worrying about this opening too soon. So this is great for the farmer's market. A nice unfurling rose smells better, looks better. For those visual shoppers, that's going to be more appealing, but this is going to be more practical for the florist. Anything beyond this open, even if it's for the farmer's market, I'm going to deadhead it. And that's because it's just going to open a little more, especially out in the environs at our stand. It's going to open, even if it looks good when they bring it home, if it kind of sheds or shatters in the couple days after bringing it home, they're not going to have a positive feeling about their purchase. And roses aren't cheap. They run a kind of a pretty penny. These varieties we sell for $32 a dozen, wholesale. And at the farmer's market, it's $15 for 6 stems. So, so we gotta make them be worth their while. So here is an example of 2 open compared to that one that I deemed okay. Just a little too much. So what I did instead was I deadheaded it, and I'm letting the side shoots bloom. And with Generous Gardener, that's really effective. There's a lot of side shoots on this variety, and they turn into decent roses. Some roses are less that way, and so we wouldn't expect much from the side shoots, but this rose still has a future. That smells good. So determined the window of harvest, then there's just the practical nature of how do you do this efficiently. So we don't carry buckets out into the rows with us. We have all of our buckets on a harvest cart at the end of the beds. And we make our way through systematically. I'm holding my roses in my left hand, and I'm cutting with my right. And then I line up my stems as I go. See? You don't want them all cattywampus because that's going to bother you later. I'm also not going to harvest, sometimes you'll have a stem and then it goes to a thicker stem and then another stem. We're not going to cut them with these big chunky stems at the bottom. If the primary first year growth stem isn't long enough, then that's a deadhead, because when you come to strip those roses and remove the thorns, that causes a slowdown. It's a headache, and it's not that easy for the florist to work with either. So anyway, I'm going through, I'm cutting everything. After a while, this feels second nature, and you can do it quite quickly. Lining up my stems, sometimes kind of tapping them on my big pregnant belly to line them up until I have as many as I can physically hold. Sometimes I'll grab 2 at once. See, I've got the 2 heads lined up. Once I have as many as I can physically hold, I lay them down in the shade of this bed on the landscape fabric to keep the, dewy, wet heads from getting dirty. And I keep going until I get to the end of the row. And then when I'm at the end of the row, I start walking back, picking up my piles, lining them all up until I have a huge armful of roses. And then those all go into the bucket together in one fell swoop. Kind of bounce them down, make sure they're all in water. You want to fill your rose buckets up a little bit more because they can kind of get tangled on each other, and if they get dehydrated, they'll never be the same again. Deadheading as I go as needed. There's so many roses out here. Sometimes with these varieties that are sprays, if I'm just like overrun with roses, you can just, even if they're at a good stage, just deadhead the center one and let those side shoots come on to just kind of kick the can down the road if you have too many of any one type. Yeah, once they're all in water, we drive them in. We load them right into the cooler unless they're wet with dew, in which case we leave them out and turn a fan on them to dry them off a bit. And then when we're done with the rose harvest, we come in and we start stripping them. So the stripping process, there's different philosophies on whether to strip your roses before you sell them to florists or not. I do it because I think it helps move them, and it's kind of a nice courtesy, but it's definitely labor consumptive. But anyway, you got to do it for the farmer's market, so might as well just do them all. I'm going to use this little handy dandy rose stripper, and I just take my roses, and the goal is to remove leaves and thorns, but not strip the outer layer of the stem itself. So I'm not gripping it as hard as possible. So I'm just grabbing it hard enough that I can strip off the leaves and the thorns, but not so hard that I'm going to strip the whole stem. And with a sure motion, I am removing thorns and leaves. Or just knocking off the tip of the thorn so that it's safe to handle. So closing the little teeth around the stem, and then I do have to do this quickly, otherwise it won't work. Just with commitment and conviction. Really simple as that. Some people also like to forgo this and just use their leather gloves, which is certainly less of a risk to the rose, but it does wear out your leather gloves very quickly. So, up to you. And then, as I said, I like to kind of sort as I go. So either by height or by openness, I'm going to make kind of distinct piles. So here's a shorter one. Here's a taller one. I'm going to put the shorter one on one side and the taller one on the other. That way I can kind of make bunches as I go without rose heads all at different levels. It's nice to line them up so the thorns of one don't damage the flower of another. Not much to it. Just want to be kind of quick about it. And then we put them in fresh water after we make bunches, and we give everybody a fresh cut. So say we're nearly there. say I'm making a farmer's market bunch because that's only 6. I can now remove my gloves, so I've now made it safe. And I like to line up the heads and count. 5. And heads should be within a few inches of each other. They don't need to be perfectly lined up, but around there. And then I'll go to the shortest of my stems and recut everything at an angle like so. Let the most water in possible. Throw my rubber band around and into fresh water. One other thing I'll mention is you don't want to clean up the heads too much unless there's something very egregious. And that's because these outer petals are thicker and stronger than the petals inside. They're called guard petals because their job is to guard the other petals. And if you remove them because there's maybe a blemish or a little tear on one, you may be momentarily making the bunch look more pristine, but then in transit, they're more likely to get bruised and damaged. So best to just let them do their job, those outer petals, and then if the florist wants to clean them up on their end, they can.